just joined. Recording should be on, and we are good to start. So the topic of the day is the AEM Frontend Showdown number 2. Why number 2? Because we had a very interesting event previous to this one, which was more like a panel discussion, where we had 5 champions discussing like which front-end approaches make sense, for certain use cases, what to recommend, what's going to be the future, etc. Since that was a panel discussion, of course, we didn't share anything like concrete in terms of demos. And there were a lot of questions, like hands-on questions, like, okay, but how is this possible with Next.js, or how do I do this with EDS? So we decided to do a follow-up event where we are going to try to make it a lot more concrete and show you live demos comparing a Next.js demo app and an EDS demo app, also with 2 different editors. So the Next.js demo is going to be using the Universal Editor, while the EDS demo is going to be using the new document authoring interface. So yeah, with that, I think a small introduction from my side, and we can kick off. So if you're wondering why I have such a robot voice today, that's because I was on the match yesterday, as you can see on the picture, supporting Croatia, who qualified for the World Championship yesterday. My name is Daniel. I'm, of course, from Croatia, from a small town, Varaždin, where this game was played yesterday. And I run my own AEM consultancy, Meticulous Digital, and I blog at least once a month on different AEM topics, best practices, guidelines. So make sure to visit my blog if some of these topics are interesting for you. There is much more there. And the agenda for today is going to be, as I said, live demos and comparison between the 2. I will try to focus most of the time on the live demos, show you a couple of different perspectives, like how end users would see it, how authors would see it, and of course, developers. And then we will look at pros versus cons, right? Because we know everyone who's been in IT long enough knows that there is no silver bullet solution. So we're going to look at what makes sense in certain use cases and also for what clients. So I hope that you're interested in this topic and that this session is gonna reveal maybe some new ideas and discussions. So before I start with this slide, I just wanted to mention, if you have any questions, I don't see them right now, but please put them in the chat. In the end of the presentation, I will come back to your questions and try to answer as many as I can. Okay, so we said we have 2 demos. First one is Edge Delivery Services. And one of the great things that Edge Delivery Services kind of brings you out of the box is an amazing performance, Lighthouse scores, and end user experience. And all of that comes with different kind of editorial modes, because Edge Delivery Services is just a decoupled layer to deliver your front-end application to your end users. And you can use it with a Universal Editor. You can use it in kind of headless mode with document-based authoring, or the new document authoring kind of lightweight CMS that I'm also going to show you as part of this demo. So basically, it has a lot of different opportunities how to connect content with the delivery layer. And when I talk about a Jamstack, the architecture here is somehow similar to EDS, but also a little bit different, because the idea about Jamstack is that you layer your front end, your CDN, your different systems like CMS, but also PIM and other systems, so that you can have an architecture where you can also easily replace some of those systems with different ones. So what I'm going to show you in the demo is a combination of AEM, Next.js, and Vercel. But it could be also different solutions. You could use a different CDN, for example, or you can hook in different systems, which is, of course, very, very common in the enterprise world that mostly use AEM. One thing that's interesting about the Jamstack approach is the idea that the static site generator should pre-build and push all the content to the CDN instead of the CDN fetching all the content from, for example, the CMS. And the idea is to try to pre-build and server-side statically generate actually as much content as possible. But of course, for the dynamic content, we will still need those requests to reach the system. Okay, so that was a small intro about kind of high-level architecture and the differences between the two demos. And with that, I will jump straight over to my Chrome, where I'm going to show you the two demos running side by side. So first, we have this Next.js demo. Let me just refresh it. So this is deployed to Vercel, and as you can see, this is a live demo site. I just created something dummy for that is mimicking like my company website, and it's not a lot. So we have a header, we have a footer, we have a teaser, we have a hero, we have a couple of cards here, and basically, yeah, a demo site that's pretty simple, but enough to demonstrate and kind of compare with the EDS approach. So I created a couple of pages just so we don't have only one. So if you click on About Us, you will see all the same components, but a little bit of different content. And I'm not sure how well you see this on screen share, but when I jump over to another page, everything loads super, super fast. And we got a super nice end user experience because everything on this page is statically generated, which means that everything delivered with Next.js in this example is server-side rendered or pre-rendered actually. There are no dynamic components. And if you wonder how to create a dynamic component, let's say we want to display here like your name after you log in, then of course that would need to be a client-side component. And this is not possible to server-side render if you want different experience for different users. But then you limit, that component to this small piece of the browser. Everything else should still be delivered server-side. Let's have a look at my other example that uses EDS. I tried to create like a very similar website or demo site like I did for the Next.js demo with Edge Delivery Services. And you can see also like how it looks here. It's almost the same, but my lack of front-end CSS skills made it a little bit different, but in concept it's the same. So we have the hero, we have the teaser with some CTAs, one here as well, and some cards here at the bottom and footer, of course. If I browse through a different site on EDS, you can see like the also performance for the end users is really amazing because again, with the EDS approach, everything is server-side rendered. It is although rendered in a little bit different way compared to Next.js, and I'll come to that in a second. So what's great about EDS is the out-of-the-box performance, right? So if I do a page speed test, and I did one test live, as you can see just before this presentation, we get like for a simple site like this, we can get easily hundreds from 100. The only reason why SEO is 69 is because the page is blocked for indexing. So it would be 100 if we allow indexing on this site. So really, really great performance also on mobile. If you're wondering what happens if we use Next, well, pretty much the same thing. So Next.js is also kind of pre-built to achieve excellent performance on page speed and for the end users. So here we get 99. And you see all numbers look really, really great. I want to show you one difference though. Since Next.js, and this is my Next.js example, is using fully server-side rendering or nothing happens client-side in this example. Here, if we do a little bit of throttling here and go to a slow 4G, for example, and try to refresh this page even on a slow network, you're going to see the experience is pretty nice, right? Nothing is shifting left or right. First, we get the main content loaded, like the text, and then the image is slowly loading behind the scenes, and then the stuff beneath, because everything here is delivered as full HTML. So we also get great SEO and good loading performance. On EDS, it works similar. If I go back to my home page and again do a little bit of throttling here, slow 4G, refresh this page, you will see it also loads pretty fast on a slow network. But you may notice that the hero loads first and then like the header kind of blinks a little bit later. That's, I think, the only thing where I think Next.js does a little bit of better job. Because we have this client-side decoration and kind of layered rendering approach with EDS, which determines the order of which components are going to load first. So of course, the LCP is prioritized, that's our hero, and then the header loads a little bit later, but you can only really see this on very slow connections. If you use a normal fast connection, it's gonna perform great. Yeah, the difference is with EDS, we do get also server-side render content, so it's great for SEO, but there is some piece of JavaScript that loads on top, which then does certain manipulations within the HTML or the elements in the DOM, or add some dynamic things which we can't unfortunately do server-side with this approach. So I think that's enough regarding like the client or the end user view. So let's have a look at how these two solutions work if we look at the editorial side of things. And here I need to make a disclaimer. So since the demo that I'm going to show you, this one with Next.js, is built with Universal Editor, and I'm going to show you Universal Editor in a second. And the Edge Delivery demo is built with document authoring. That doesn't mean that also Edge Delivery cannot work with Universal Editor. It's contrary. So Edge Delivery can work both with Universal Editor and document authoring and classic document-based editing. So all the approaches work with EDS. If you decide to go with Next.js, then the only way to get it working is the Universal Editor. That's why I used Universal Editor for this example. So if you do decide to use Universal Editor, I think a really, really nice thing is that you keep your sites in AEM. What that means? That means that you can still use all the other cool features besides the classic editor in AEM. You can do publishing here. You can use your custom workflows, whatever you are basically used to in AEM. The only difference is when you want to edit. Here I actually created a custom button for the Universal Editor because I created this demo a little bit a while ago. But today there is actually configuration to configure this edit button to open either the old editor or the new editor. So this new button that I created to open in the Universal Editor is not needed anymore. Yeah, and you can achieve the same, again, setup with both EDS and Next.js. But let's jump over to the Universal Editor to check how the editorial experience looks like with Universal Editor. And this is, in my personal opinion, one of the best innovations that Adobe did recently with AEM, because I really like this approach that Universal Editor is opening like the world to clients and for us consultants to basically use any technology that we want, right? Once again, this site that you see here, this is a Next.js site, but Universal Editor supports any type of front end, and I've tried it with several front ends and no issues. It is relying on pure HTML attributes pretty much, so it can work with any front end technology. So what's cool about Universal Editor? First of all, we can do this type of inline editing. If you click anywhere, right, this automatically gets stored, and it gets stored, of course, in our AEM because that's how this page is configured to store content in AEM. We have, as I said, a couple of components here, and let's say we want to add a new component. So I will jump over to my main container here. Let me just minimize here so you see a little better, and I will add a new teaser component. All right, so the new teaser is here. Let me just add some text. My new teaser. Great. Let me maybe copy the image from one of these teasers so we are quick, and maybe add some rich text. Maybe add some bold here, and here we go. We have a new teaser, right? And if you want to publish this, of course, click on the publish button. We can go live right away with this since this is just a demo. And then what happens is that this content now that is published needs to be served by Next.js, which is in my case running on Vercel here. So we need to have a bit of custom logic here, how to pull content from AEM and how to refresh the Next.js cache. Since this is a very basic demo, I need to go to the home page where we added our teaser. You see already like the live keyword that added is here, and my new teaser is here. So all good. So how does this work in this demo? Very, very basic setup. So I have a TTL of 1 minute where Next.js is checking for changes and will update its content. A more kind of future-proof or like enterprise-grade scenario would be that we actually catch publication events from AEM and then clear certain areas in the Next.js cache and only rebuild the pages that actually need to be rebuilt. So this would be a more proper solution if you really want to take it live. Okay, I think that's mostly it, and you get kind of the idea how editing works with Universal Editor. Maybe one thing you noticed is that when I load my Next.js app in the Universal Editor, I use this URL/API/draft. So why am I just not using, this standard homepage USCN, for example? Why do I need to add this additional parameters here? And the reason is Next.js in this setup needs to know how to grab content from AEM. And since we are now kind of in the author perspective, we need to grab, of course, content from AEM author, because everything I added here, I want to see this live preview on the left. So even if I do edits right over here, right, I want to see the live preview right away. So in this scenario where I'm connected to the editor, I want my Next.js to deliver content from AEM author. Of course, for my end users, I don't want that. So the edits that I just made, they actually appeared here, but because I haven't disabled my draft mode. So if I disable draft mode and grab content from publisher, then of course the view from my editor for the unpublished content and the view from my end user for the published content is going to be different. I will show you a little bit how this works also from a dev perspective. But let's jump over to our second demo now and compare kind of between the two different editorial experiences. So the EDS demo is built with document authoring, and don't confuse document authoring with document-based authoring. The naming is a little bit, I know, weird, but usually, at least when I say document-based, I mean like the old way how EDS used to work with like Word documents and Excel documents. And when we say document authoring, or DA for short, we mostly mean these days this new interface that Adobe developed, kind of a lightweight CMS for EDS, where you can also edit your content in basically documents, but you get this nice interface and storage and everything kind of included in this small lightweight CMS application. So again, you see I have a couple of pages here, and if I open my homepage here, then let's check how the editing experience looks like in DA. So you can see like all the components here. It basically looks like Word. It's still kind of document based, but also kind of with kind of a nice preview. I think personally it looks a little bit better than how it worked with Word. So you can see like these are cards. So you don't have really what you say is what you get, but it also looks pretty nice. If we would like to make a change here, we do it like we would be editing a Word document. So If we want to add, for example, a new section here, we can click on a section, and then we can add also a block here. I'm going to copy over this image and maybe this text, but I'll type something different. I don't know. We are super happy. Okay. And yeah, if you want to publish it, I mean, this is also super simple, super fast, one click of a button, and we will soon get a new tab opened with a preview of our changes, right? And you can see we have our new teaser added here, a little bit of different editing experience, a little bit, of course, simplified as well, because here you can also have multi-site manager, yes. You can have translations, yes, but it works a little bit differently than how it works in Classic AEM. So if you decide to use Universal Editor, you still stick to Classic AEM for those things. If you decide to use DA, then there are apps or tools in DA how to achieve similar things that we have in AEM. Of course, maybe not everything is possible in DA like in AEM, since AEM is very extendable and we can add any type of customizations we want. Here we can also customize, yes, but we are a little bit more limited. Same as if you compare customizations in the Universal Editor and the old editor. We can customize Universal Editor, yes, but we can only customize certain features. We cannot customize everything. Basically, Adobe is, I would say, purposely limiting us from customizing too much. And by the way, I don't see this as a bad thing, because I've seen many projects that customize way too much than they should. All right. And yeah, we looked at user perspective, editor perspective. So last thing to look at is the developer perspective. So let me just see if you still see my screen. Okay, you do. I'm going to start with Next.js again. And I'm not going to show you the whole code base because that would, take some time. I just want to show you some parts so you kind of get the feeling of what the developer experience is like using these two different technologies. So first thing, if you use Next.js with Universal Editor, you will need to add a couple of things to make your Next.js app render for what Universal Editor expects, right? So you will need to add some libraries. You will need to add some configuration, how to connect to AEM. And you will need to create some definitions. What is a container, how to add components in a container, and what are the properties that every container has. But you can simply put that in one file or a couple of files. So when you do your Next.js component, it should look like a normal Next.js React component and shouldn't have much to do with AEM because this is kind of a hybrid approach. I wouldn't call it fully headless, but it's headless enough for me. I like it because the only thing we need to add is this couple of additional scripts and some metadata in the HTML, which we, by the way, only render in the edit mode. So once the user loads the application, it doesn't have to anywhere say that this application is getting the data from AEM. As you can see, we're using TypeScript here. This is an example of the teaser component, and it's a standard React Next component that, of course, reuses other components. The great thing I like about React is that you can use this kind of atomic approach and reuse a lot of stuff. And if you have a design library, you can really nicely follow it like from design to code and reuse a lot of things. What you will need to add, however, to make it work in the Universal Editor is the path to the resource, because Universal Editor needs to know where to store the content, and a couple of additional metadata like labels and stuff. But that's it. Like everything else is pure Next.js. What is far more complex when you do a Next.js app compared to EDS is how you fetch the content and how you render the content. Because in EDS, you get a lot of the stuff out of the box. And if you decide to go with Next, you will need to do those things yourself. So basically, here we are using in this sample, it's not production ready, of course. So we are using the out-of-the-box JSON APIs to grab the content. And then we have we grab the page content, and then we also grab like the content of all the components, so that when we change the order, we also get the correct order from AEM, and we render the components exactly in that order how they are in AEM, and of course with the right content. And yeah, all this needs to be done in a custom way. If we compare that to how this sample site looks with EDS, and doesn't really matter if it's with Universal Editor or document authoring. If you do use DA, then the only thing you need to provide is kind of link it to your DA account, so it knows where to grab the content. And you get a lot of the stuff out of the box. You get also a lot of components out of the box. I'm just going to show you one very basic example. This is, for example, the cards component. The thing I hear from front-end developers they don't like with this approach is that they need to do this client-side declarations. So this is, first of all, vanilla JavaScript. So no React, no Next, and also not recommended to add any heavy frameworks to it, because that's kind of the path to not get as great results as EDS brings out of the box. So you get HTML outputted that you can't really control, right? So maybe you want to have a proper UL LI list instead of the divs, or anything like that. You need to use JavaScript for that. I mean, it works great. It's going to run super fast because this is vanilla JavaScript and it's heavily optimized by Adobe. But you still need to do that kind of client side in JavaScript, which is a little bit different approach than what most developers are used to. Components themselves, they are, quite nice, still small. It's a little bit harder, in my opinion, to do a proper like atomic approach and reuse as many things as in React. But then, again, you get the benefit of not relying on a heavy front-end framework, which might not also be a bad strategy long term to not commit to using a specific front-end frameworks, because we all know they also change a lot from time to time. Okay, and with that, I will go back to my presentation because I want to show you pros and cons, plan fit still, and I want to leave some time for your questions. So hopefully you liked the demo, and now you're thinking, okay, but both of these technologies are really cool, right? They provide state-of-the-art performance. Universal Editor works with both of them, which provides state-of-the-art editor experience. So what do I tell clients? Like, how do we decide, like, what should be the criteria? So we'll start with the choice of editor. So how to decide if doc-based editing or document authoring is the right fit for a client, or if Universal Editor would be the right fit, regardless of if you use, for example, Universal Editor for Next.js or EDS. And everything you see on this slide, this is my personal opinion. Some best practices that I think are correct, or I advise to clients, and you don't necessarily have to agree with them. Feel free to challenge any of them in the questions. But I see doc-based more ideal for smaller websites. I'm not saying you can't build enterprise websites. I know you can, and I've seen it. But I see it more kind of beneficial for smaller websites, especially like blogs or stuff like that. Or you can even combine, like you can do some parts. If you use EDS, you can combine doc-based and universal editing and do some things doc-based and some things in Universal Editor. What's really cool if you use the classic doc-based is that you can also do offline editing, and that authors can actually prepare content and not work on the page structure, or work in parallel actually with developers. So authors prepare the content, and in parallel, developers create the new components that are needed. Everyone knows how to use it. I think that's probably the biggest benefit of doc-based is because even with VA, I mean, it still looks like Word, Excel. It's known to everyone, and basically you don't have to onboard anyone to use it. There were a lot of comments that, features are missing, MSM is missing, translation support is missing. But if you check the latest support in DEA, all of these tools are now available. Maybe they're not as complex as their implementations in AEM, but these tools are now available, and we see Adobe is adding more and more features to it, and it is becoming more and more kind of also enterprise ready. What I don't like about doc-based is that there's a lot of copy pasting, and this can lead to errors or repeating stuff, and maybe I prefer reusability over copy pasting when possible. When we look at Universal Editor, it really makes sense. I mean, for different kinds of websites, but especially for enterprise with a lot of content. Why? Because there are certain guidelines and certain structure that the authors need to follow. And it's web-based, it's in context editing, you saw it in the demo, is what you see, what you get. Especially if clients are used to AEM, move to Universal Editor is, I think, the natural next step. It's also a good fit when you have large design systems and you need to follow the atomic component development approach. MSM was also not supported in the beginning, but now it's there. There is also a plugin for Universal Editor. You can get MSM. It's working. It's enterprise ready. It's been there for a while, and I think it's now a mature tool that's ready for adoption. We basically do kind of headless / hybrid. I would say more hybrid. But there is really, really thin connection layer between your CMS and the editor itself. But of course, it requires some onboarding, right? So people still need to know how to work with AEM and how to work with Universal Editor, so a little bit more complex compared to DA. Let's talk about pros and cons next. And let's look at the left side first, EDS. And the first point is really interesting because developing components in vanilla JavaScript, this can be, I think, depending on who looks at it, it can be both a pro and a con. A con maybe is that not all developers like to work with vanilla.js. And personally, I found it a little bit harder to find front-end developers that want to work with vanilla.js compared to finding front-end developers. From an architectural point of view, it can actually be a benefit because you are not committing to any framework. And we know front-end frameworks change a lot. And right now, React is super popular, Next is super popular, but what will happen in 5 or 10 years, we don't really know. Great thing about EDS is that it does server-side rendering, which means your SEO is going to be great. The thing that I don't like as much are the client-side decorations. But again, it performs really well because it's plain JavaScript, and Adobe made sure that there is a nicely layered rendering approach, and loading that JavaScript is not too much of a burden for any browser, even on slow connections. With EDS, you rely fully on Adobe's infrastructure, right? So that's great. You don't have to buy any additional infrastructure. You have strong Web Vitals out of the box, and you have direct support and updates from Adobe. This is, of course, really nice when you want to reduce the maintenance overhead over the whole solution. You are, of course, tied with the Adobe's ecosystem. So choosing AEM, Universal Editor, or UA with combination of EDS means that you are betting on Adobe, and it's going to be harder to switch to any other vendor. There is great support for integration with Adobe Commerce. So if there is a Adobe Commerce integration, you get a lot of stuff out of the box now from Adobe, which saves a lot of development time. And again, can work both with document authoring and Universal Editor. If we look at Next.js on the other side, I think the pro is that you develop components in this modern, but again, complex front-end framework. In my personal experience, front-end developers do like Next.js and React, most of them. And what Next.js does a little bit different compared to EDS is that it does static site generation. This means that we pre-generate all the HTML and basically deliver fully rendered HTML to the browser. And this, of course, achieves also great performance. When we need to do something client-side, of course, we need to do that client-side, but we need to prefer the server-side or static site generation. Of course, the bad thing, this setup with Next.js costs more money, right? It requires additional infrastructure because Adobe is not going to run your Next.js application. You need to run it somewhere, so that can be AWS or Azure. You need to scale it, etc. And it can achieve the same kind of strong Corvette vitals. And there is a lot of built-in stuff in Next.js for caching, reinvalidation, and stuff. There is a large community, a lot of documentation you can find online. And it's going to be React-based, and it's going to have TypeScript and everything that kind of developers are used to these days, front-end developers. So again, both of these great technologies work a little bit differently. So how do you decide which client to recommend what? Should I even talk about Next.js about this client? That's always something that kind of I wonder. So here are some advices from my side. EDS, I would say you can talk to any client, but mid-market or enterprise is usually what we talk about. Next.js really only makes sense to talk to clients if it's a complex enterprise site or multi-site, where this investment that you need to do in the infrastructure and additional development is going to pay off. For clients that rely fully on Adobe as their strategy and vision for their sites, you shouldn't think twice. EDS is then the way to go. But on the other hand, there are also clients that are looking to kind of decouple a little bit. They don't want their front end tied with their CMS, or they want to avoid vendor lock-in. And for them, it would make sense to show them the Next.js approach. EDS is great for prioritizing like speed and agility. And if that's what the marketing team wants, then that's the way to go. With Next.js, kind of the focus is more on product and engineering teams, where you have a lot more control and you can basically customize anything. With Next.js, you get a strong front-end framework. With EDS, you avoid using any front-end framework. So different clients will have different opinions on that. Time to market is going to be really great. With EDS, you can develop sites really fast. And POCs or MVPs really require low effort. I'm talking few hours, and you can get a customized demo for a client. While with Next.js, it's going to take significantly more effort to build the demo like I just showed you today, if you want to customize it for a client. If I need to compare, I would say EDS 2-3 hours, Next.js definitely a couple of days. If you are not used to working with Next.js, it could take weeks. EDS is great if you need to do moderate customization, so it is possible to customize. But in Next.js, it's possible to customize more. And also with EDS, you can have, of course, third-party integrations. Where I think Next.js shines is if you have really a huge number of integrations. Then you can like statically generate also content from different sources. So not only CMS, but statically generate content from any other third-party integration that you may find. In terms of deployment, EDS does a great job. So basically, you can spin up environments with Git commits and branches. It works super fast, super nice. With Next.js, you need to have a lot of know-how on how its cache invalidation and build works to really make a good setup. And it's going to take time. I think EDS works really well if you, again, rely on Adobe, and then you get the Adobe out-of-the-box CDN. If a client, on the other hand, has a bring your own CDN, then then Next.js would make more sense than to connect Next.js with the Adobe out-of-the-box CDN. I think EDS is fit for a company of any digital maturity. And the great thing is that basically you don't need DevOps teams anymore. I mean, you of course need developer teams, but the developers teams can handle the DevOps work when you use EDS. With Next.js, you really need high digital maturity from a client, and also a strong DevOps team to set up and maintain all the infrastructure, because then it's not AEM that delivers the content, it's the Next.js server that delivers the content to your end user. So it needs to scale, it needs to be really performant. You need to maybe have, incident management, those kinds of stuff. Overall, it's going to be lower total cost of ownership if you take the EDS way, and of course, higher cost of ownership due to additional development and infrastructure if you go with EDS way. So that would be everything for today's session. I hope you liked the demo. Hope you liked the tips. Please leave me some feedback, and let's use the remaining time to check your questions. I will stop the recording now. So if you want, you can also, I can make you a presenter and you can ask your question directly.